Hello, I'm Phil Cleary. Welcome to the first edition of our halftime series of Footy Flashbacks. In 2008, we're celebrating 150 years of the great Australian game, the game our Indigenous brothers first played with possum skin footies on the plains of Victoria before Tom Wills and Henry Harrison turned it into a game to keep the cricketing toffs fit during the winter months. Footy's come a long way since that first organised match between Melbourne Grammar and Scotch College at Yarra Park on the 7th of August 1858. In July 1958, the game's controlling body, the Australian National Football Council, organised a centenary carnival in Melbourne with the VFL, South Australia, Tasmania, Western Australia and the VFA competing in Division 1 and the ACT, New South Wales, Queensland and the Australian Amateurs competing in Division 2. The carnival was officially opened by Australia's Prime Minister, Sir Robert Menzies, who was a lifelong fan of the Carlton Football Club.
100 years of the greatest game of football yet invented by man. We believe that in Victoria, you believe it in your various states.
We trawled the archives and found some truly classic highlights from the VFL versus South Australian match of 1958, a match never screened for a South Australian audience. Why, you ask? Because TV didn't make its way to Adelaide until 1959. Look at those big names. John Abley, a three-time All-Australian. Magarey medalists Jeff Motley, Barry Barbary, John Halbert and Lindsay Head. Hayden Bunton Jr., the Iron Man, Neil Curley. Look out for his dropkick goal in the highlights. Ken McGregor, who was one half of the famous tennis Grand Slam winning doubles combination of Sedgman McGregor. And yes, that man on the half-back flank, Max Hewitt, is indeed the grandfather of the one and only Leighton Hewitt. And what about the Vicks? Brownlow medalist Kevin Bulldog Murray and Neil Roberts, bomber champion Jack Clark, older brother of Olympian Ron, Teddy Whitten and Ron Barassi. How good were they? And 19-year-old Bobby Skilton, who was wearing the Big V for the first time, alongside Alan Aylett, Tassie Medal winner for the best player in the 1958 Carnival, won on a countback from Ted Whitten. Thankfully, the great EJ was awarded a retrospective medal years later.
Everything in readiness. Umpire Len Gardner from West Australia in charge of the match. The bounce, the first tap going to Melbourne's Bob Johnson as play goes down to centre half forward for the Victorian League. Victorian League in the attack very early. Watch Victoria now. Aylett shoots it across goal. Dugdale flies, can't bring it down. A scramble, down it goes. Abrahams picks up and shoots it through to Victoria's first goal. South Australia going to attack as centre half forward Costello drives the ball goalwards. Play pretty vigorous here. Watch Bruce Combat and the bare arms flattened as he tries to go forward. What a beauty. Plenty of bumps, good solid bumps, and finally it's little Bobby Skilton coming through with the ball again, the South Melbourne Rover, and his clearing kick downfield. South Australia, not to be denied, come again. Nice hand pass, down to centre half forward again. South Australia still attacking, and number 11, Kitchen, drives it for their first real scoring opportunity, but out of bounds. But Victoria were playing power football in the first quarter, and there's Bob Skilton kicking a lovely angle goal almost from the boundary line. Victoria incessantly attacking. This time it's Aylett. There he is in the bare arms, number 5. In the centre, going for the tap, number 27 of South Australia. In the lighter jerseys is Ken McGregor, the former Davis Cup star, and a beautiful tap too by McGregor, sending South Australia into attack. They send the ball down to centre half forward Costello. He played a pretty serviceable game for South Australia today, even though up against a very worthy opponent in Neil Roberts. South Australia still having trouble breaking clear. Victoria clears the ball back towards centre half forward, but here's Costello again driving it down, and here's a glorious mark by Harry Sullivan, the Victorian full-back. And an equally good mark too taken from his kick by our Davis Cup friend Ken McGregor. Very valuable ruckman for South Australia. And it's Sullivan again this time. South Australia in attack, and here's their first goal for the match, kicked by full forward Neil Curley. A fair way out and a beautiful drop kick. Just watch this glorious move, started by Kevin Murray, the half-back flanker, as he races to the ball with a good run down the half-back flank, gathers it in at half-forward flank, boots it up. Ted Whitten is almost out of picture as he marks it, underneath the stand there, almost on the boundary. Very quickly passes up to Bob Davis, making the loose man, number 1. Davis goes back looking for Aylett. Aylett, plenty of attention as he's flattened, and umpire Gardner enforces the 15-yard penalty for the Victorian rover to take this shot for goal. Right through the middle. Aylett to Whitten. Whitten whips a hand pass back to Aylett on the run. In comes Aylett to Arthur. Arthur gets his kick down, and a brilliant mark taken by Barassi. Barassi, with 5 goals, was one of the stars. He also played extremely well in defence. And that gives you some idea of the way Victoria won very convincingly over South Australia in the big game today.
It's been certainly a privilege to play with such a fine Victorian team and a fine bunch of fellows, Ray.
Bob, you've played in a number of interstate matches. How do you rate the Victorian Football League sides put into the field in this carnival with sides of the past?
Well, I would say this is the best football team that I've ever played with, Ray, in any series, whether it's been our good years of 51, 52 at Geelong or any carnival games that I have played in.
Was it any wonder the Geelong flyer Bobby Davis said the 1958 side was the best he played in? 25 goals 17 to 7 goals 7 says it all. Just as well Victoria didn't kick straight. Baggy shorts, kick and mark, it was a different game in the 50s. And although the game looked slower and handball was a rarity, every one of those blokes would have been a champion today. Victoria was unstoppable in the 50s, but all that was to change in the 60s, when South Australia, Western Australia and even Tasmania inflicted defeats on the Big V. And don't forget, they did it at a time when many of their star players were playing for Victoria and State of Origin hadn't even been thought of. See you next week when we take a peep at South Australia versus Tasmania from the Carnival in Brisbane in 1961.